Okay. It is kind of difficult to start this presentation without first doing that. Okay, so welcome to my individual project. I did the hashtag No Dakota Access Pipeline movement, which I'm sure um, everybody in this country was made aware of at least a little bit. It was very, very prevalent in the media and especially on social media, and that's why I thought it was a perfect case study for this project. Now, first, for a little bit of background info, so what exactly is the Dakota Access Pipeline? This pipeline planned to carry 470,000 barrels of crude oil a day across a 1,200-mile route from North Dakota to Illinois. It was built by Energy Transfer Partners, which is a subsidiary of a Texas-based company. And at the time these protests really erupted in early 2016, most of the pipeline had actually already been constructed, with the exception of a small section in South Dakota near the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation, which actually is on the South Dakota-North Dakota border, and the reservation contains land in both states, so it's right there on the border of North and South Dakota. So, what exactly was the controversy? Why did this movement start? Well, it was opposed by the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, and they had a lot of grievances with the construction of the pipeline. First of all, they claimed that the pipeline would destroy one of their burial sites by constructing it and digging up that land. It would obviously kind of desecrate the land that they claimed to be one of their ancient burial sites. So they weren't too happy about that prospect. They also claimed that they weren't adequately consulted by the government. It's actually by federal law. Um, the federal government, as well as companies who try to engage in construction like this that run through reservations, have to give ample awareness and kind of opportunity for pushback to the people who would be affected. And they claimed that they really weren't given this notice, nor were they really given a chance to say why they disagreed with it or didn't want it to happen. So that was another one of their claims. There was also worries about the pipeline passing into the Missouri River, which caught the attention of environmentalists, because if the pipeline were to leak, then and end up in the Missouri River, then that wouldn't only affect the Standing Rock tribe and their drinking water and aqua life, but also a lot of people in the area, because the Missouri River is obviously a large river and a large source of water, really in the country, but specifically that area. And then later on, I'll kind of touch on the claims of police brutality when protesters and the police clashed at the Standing Rock site. So the movement really started when the Standing Rock tribe found out that this portion of the pipeline was going to be routed their through their reservation, or at least very near to their reservation. I believe it wasn't. I believe it wasn't necessarily gonna be routed through the lines of the reservation that are legally drawn, but in very, very close proximity. So because of this, 30 members of the Standing Rock youth took to the internet to spread awareness of their grievances and their problems with this pipeline. And this kind of started in March of 2016. And the first real action that they took was 13-year-old Annalee Rain Yellowhammer started a Change.org petition, which they then made a YouTube video about and tried to spread on social media. And this kind of got the ball rolling for the movement. And this petition actually, at this point, has 556,000 signatures. But that obviously wasn't that big at the time that it was started. That is numbers from today, but this petition was really the start of the campaign, and it really started a social first campaign because um, the Standing Rock people aren't a giant group of people. As this shows, I mean, just 30 members were really the um, people who started this, so they knew that they had to get onto social media, which was a platform where they knew they could reach way more people and really spread awareness about this campaign. So, what were their specific actions in this social campaign? Well, first of all, they created some hashtags which really gave the movement some traction. So the hashtag NoDAPL, or No Dakota Access Pipeline, hashtag has actually pretty much become the um, title of this movement, if you will, even though it is a hashtag. And this hashtag, and some numbers that I found from the American Marketing Association, between September 1st and November 30th, which was really the height of this movement, it was used in 4.41 million tweets, which came out to, over this 2-month period, about 48,517 uses per day, which is just really incredible numbers when you consider, like I said, that this movement just started with 30 people. But obviously, it took a while to get there, and took some publicity. But really, the beginning of this publicity that they ended up getting, and the attention that they started with their hashtags. And then, of course, they also had the popular Stand with Standing Rock, and then Respect Our Water. And one thing that I'd like to note about the fact that hashtag no DAPL kind of became, like I said, the title of the movement. It really is genius that they use this as the main identifier and title of the movement, because when you have a hashtag that is the name of a movement, then that tells people that it is something that they can find out about on social media, and that they can get involved with on social media. They know that they don't have to physically be there to kind of see what's going on and get involved. So I thought that was really a genius move by the people who started these hashtags. Um, Another big thing that gave this movement a lot of traction was some key influencers started to get involved. The first one I'll kind of talk about is Leonardo DiCaprio. He's a very well-known environmental activist, on the side with his acting. And he visited the site and spoke with the leaders there. He used his social media platform, which is huge, as you can see, with 17.4 million followers on his Twitter and 17.1 million page likes on his Facebook page. He used this giant base of people that were listening to him to spread these hashtags, spread his opinions and grievances with the pipeline. And that really was a big deal for starting to spread this from maybe more of a local issue to a national issue. Another really big key influencer who was really maybe even more hands-on in his involvement with this movement was actor Mark Ruffalo. As you can see, he doesn't quite have the following on Twitter or Facebook that Leonardo does, but he did use social media, and this obviously still large audience. He did use social media to spread the hashtags and spread his information, but he also got more hands-on, and he went to the site and actually provided solar panels to power heaters in the winter for the protesters, and kind of power the camps when they set up camps for the protests. And then, in addition to that, he appeared on a ton of like cable news channels and other television media to kind of be a spokesperson, a well-known spokesperson for the protesters. As you can see, I have a picture here of when he appeared on CNN to talk about the Dakota Access Pipeline. So he really helped out in a multitude of ways, other than just using his social media platform. And then one last key influencer that I'd like to talk about is Shailene Woodley. Um, Now, once again, her Twitter followers and actually her biggest social media platform is Instagram with 1.91 million followers on that. Um, but this is still obviously a big following, but kind of like Mark Ruffalo, she was um, a key influencer, more of a key influencer because of how hands-on she was with the movement and how involved she was. She as well visited the site with protesters and was at the front lines to the point where she was arrested by the North Dakota police when they did come to try to get protesters off the land. So she was actually booked. There's a mugshot of her. Obviously wasn't a long stay in jail, but it really shows how hands-on she was. And then one more thing that she did was she gave a speech at the 2016 Environmental Media Awards that really became one of the and these awards took place in October, and this was really one of the biggest and most well-known single rallying cries for the NoDAPL movement and against the Dakota Access Pipeline. And this speech got picked up by tons of news media and shared all over social media on many different well-known accounts. So even if she didn't have quite the following on her own pages, her actions and the publicity she got from being arrested, the publicity she got from giving this speech and having it get picked up by news media really made her influence exponential, just way beyond just her followers on her social media. So these three people really played a huge role in kind of taking this issue from a local one to and giving it to a national audience and making them more aware of it. Now, one other specific social media tool that was used in this campaign was Facebook check-in. And this happened because there was a rumor that was sparked that the local police at the Standing Rock site were looking at Facebook and using Facebook check-in and trying to see who the people were that were checking in at Standing Rock to identify who protesters were. Now, what they were going to do with this information, people don't really know, and it's not confirmed that they were actually using Facebook check-in to do anything to thwart the protests. But regardless, even if this wasn't, even if the people that were trying to use this Facebook check-in feature to stop the police weren't really needing to do it, it did gain a lot of traction because people thought that they could make a difference without going to the North Dakota site itself. So because people, wanted to get involved and had a way to do it, over 1 million people around the world actually checked in at Standing Rock to, in their minds, disrupt the police's tactic to identify the actual protesters at the site. So, like I said, even if it didn't accomplish what they meant to accomplish, it further spread the word of the movement and really shows how much people wanted to get involved and how much it really had spread to these people that felt very passionate about it and wanted to do something about it. Now, as I kind of touched on earlier a few times, there were clashes between police and protesters. The Oseti-Sakowin camp at Standing Rock, which was the main camp for protesters on site, actually at its height grew to 10,000 people, according to Daily Beast. And with all these people that were trying to block the construction of the site, North Dakota police were ordered to go in and try to remove the protesters from their camp, and it got really ugly. Protesters were being arrested. The protesters reported that police were using dogs mace and just in general excessive force on them to try to remove them from the site. Um, and because of this relatively brutal use of force by the police, protesters used the Facebook Live feature, which was relatively new at this time, to go live on Facebook and try to show the country and the people following this movement how they were being treated by the police there. And just to show how much people were paying attention to these Facebook Live feeds, 13-year-old Dakota Iron Eyes, one of the protesters, made a Facebook Live video that actually got over 2 million views almost 2 million views. And that's not saying that there were 2 million people watching while it was live, but after Facebook Live videos get made, you can watch it later, and almost 2 million people had watched it afterwards. So it really shows that these Facebook Live videos were being paid attention to, and were really effective in kind of pushing back at the police, who were obviously trying to kind of strong arm the people off the reservation. And a quote that I found in a Mashable article kind of also signifies this. The quote is from Aaron Wise, who is a member of the International Indigenous Youth Council. And the quote goes, quote, "I was screaming at the police, telling them, I just watched you on a video with 32,000 other people. And they seemed pretty shaken by that. I think Facebook Live really threatened the police's ability to hide." So that just kind of shows that even though they didn't have the numbers to push, or even the legal ability to push back at the police, they did have this Facebook Live feature, and they did have a social media platform where they could kind of counter the police's efforts by trying to expose their use of force, which they thought people around the country would really find excessive and disgusting, and would hopefully for them garner even more support behind their campaign. So in the end, what was the result? Well, at first, the protests were really working. On September 9th, the federal government temporarily suspended the construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline because, this was solely due to the protests. There were people physically blocking the construction, so they obviously couldn't just bulldoze through them. And then the federal government knew that there was a lot of just unrest and disagreements around the country about the pipeline, so they knew that they had to at least suspend it to kind of review what their best option was going forward. And this suspension stayed up until December 4th, when the Army Corps of Engineers under the Obama administration, and at the urging of the Obama administration, tried to block the construction completely. So they tried their best and tried to put into action some legal actions to stop the construction through the Standing Rock Reservation. But because this was very late in the game, and as far as it goes for like regime changes, they knew that they didn't have very much chance of this actually sticking, because President Donald Trump had been outspoken throughout his campaign when this was a big issue, that he was in support of the construction of the pipeline. So they knew that they didn't have much hope, and their fears did come to fruition on January 25th, 2017, when President Trump signed an executive order for builders to go ahead and proceed, but proceed with caution. He did make sure in his executive order to put stipulations that he wanted it to be reviewed more, and to be made sure that it was done right. But he did, as long as they passed these checks that he placed upon it, he did give them the green light to build. And this building did take place. They ended up finishing the pipeline, and oil began flowing through the pipeline in late March. And I got that from an article, according to Business Insider, that this oil began flowing in late March. So the protesters didn't get their end result. They didn't block the pipeline like they wanted to. But in my mind, that doesn't necessarily mean that the campaign wasn't successful. In fact, I believe it was a very successful campaign from a social media standpoint. And that's for a few reasons. First of all, as we kind of touched on, they did use some very effective hashtags. I already said earlier that the NoDAPL hashtag was getting over 48,000 uses on Twitter a day, and that doesn't even account for the other hashtags or mentions on other social media sites like Facebook, or just generally people talking about it and showing their support on social media. So that doesn't even, those 4.41 million hashtag uses of that one NoDAPL hashtag throughout a 2-month period doesn't even begin to show how much more involvement this got on social media. And I believe it was a lot due to these hashtags and how particular they were about making sure that this hashtag was placed in every single post, that it was really the identifier of their campaign, and they really focused on putting these hashtags out there. And then one other thing that I'd like to mention about the hashtags, behind NoDAPL, Stand with Standing Rock was probably the second most used hashtag in support of this movement. And I think it's kind of a genius hashtag from a word standpoint, because when you see other people using the hashtag Stand with Standing Rock, the way that it says Stand with Standing Rock, people probably thought to themselves, well, if I don't use this hashtag, if I don't show that I stand with Standing Rock, then it looks like I'm against Standing Rock. So it probably even nudged people more into a situation where they may not have been activists in the past, but they may have felt a little bit of pressure to, if they even slightly agreed with the movement and their grievances, they may have felt like they had to identify to their Facebook friends and followers that they did stand with Standing Rock. So I believe this even further shows the effectiveness of the hashtags that they chose and used. Another really big reason for success for this campaign, in my opinion, was that they gave people a bunch of different ways to get involved. A lot of the time with social movement, with movements like this, people may think that they have to be, very closely involved with the organization that may be heading the movement, or they may think they have to physically go to marches. But this movement really made it clear that you don't have to come here, or you don't have to be a Native American, or you don't have to be even necessarily an outspoken environmental activist, but you can help and you can show your support. And they gave them multiple different ways, whether it was using the hashtags, retweeting and reposting stuff in favor of the movement, or checking in on Facebook during the Facebook check-in portion of the campaign. People around the nation and even around the world felt like they were making a difference by just going on social media and doing these small things that they could do from their room. And when you make people feel like they're making a difference, it can really have a big impact, and it can really, really grow your following, which I believe this campaign did a really great job of. One other great aspect of this campaign was that it had multiple reasons for why you could support it. So whether it was you supported the movement because you believed in more fair treatment for Native Americans, or you believed in less overstepping of boundaries by big oil companies and governments to take land from people, or you believed in it, or you believed in the environmental aspect of it, and you thought that it was a concern that this pipeline was going to pass under the Missouri River, and you supported it from a environmentalist standpoint. There were so many different ways that people could have taken offense and grievances with the pipeline. So because you have all these different ways, you have all these different groups getting involved. I mean, there were Everybody from, like I said, the key influencers from Leonardo DiCaprio, who's mostly an environmental activist, to Shailene Woodley, who has been outspoken about Native American rights and as well as environmental rights in the past. You had even 2,000 Army veterans show up to the site to guard people against police brutality, which was also another aspect of the campaign that you could have gotten behind it for too, if you didn't agree with the police brutality in this country. So there were just so many different ways that people could have, taken up arms against the Dakota Access Pipeline, and that's why I believe it had such a wide following and a wide base of people who felt like they should get involved, because it had so many reasons to get involved. Obviously, like I mentioned earlier, they had a very good use of key influencers. I mentioned the 3 actors and actresses earlier, and then you also had people like Bernie Sanders, and who was vehemently in defense of the people at Standing Rock, and people like Jill Stein, who herself was arrested on site at Standing Rock. So you had politicians getting involved, and they really made sure to reach out to these key influencers and have them speak to their bases of followers on social media, and the people who listen to them speak and listen to their opinions. So that was also very key to this campaign. And this isn't something that was created by the people who started this movement, but this campaign also had perfect timing. It was perfect timing for something like this, because you have a very, very heated political campaign going on while this is going on. You have people who for most of their lives, they may not be involved in political issues, social issues, and may not be as outspoken, but because people were kind of riled up at this time and looking for excuses to get involved in what they believed in, you had a perfect you had a country that was primed to back something like this. So that was also something that it may have been kind of lucky, but it was a major reason that this was successful, because you had a lot of people who were searching for something to get behind, and very passionate about their values at this time. Now, even though I said this was a successful campaign, I also believe that there was one very key thing that they could have done better, and that was they could have had a more centralized leader to this campaign. This quote right here I pulled from the American Marketing Association article that really reviewed the entire campaign, and the author said, "With so many organizations and individuals now involved, there has been some confusion over who exactly to listen to and to follow." And I thought this was a great point, because as I just stated, there were many different reasons to get involved, and you had very many different organizations getting involved, whether it was people who were speaking out in favor of Native American rights, or speaking out in environmental opposition to it, or people speaking out in opposition to police brutality. You had many different groups that were kind of unrelated coming together to take a stand, but you didn't have one figurehead to the campaign, or one particular organization that you could point to and say, that is the organization that we look to when we're trying to see where everybody under this movement is falling. You just simply had a hashtag. You had the hashtag NoDAPL. That's the only title that centralized this campaign. So because I really liked this point that he made, I did my own research and went on Twitter and Facebook to see if they had this central campaign. And I mean, they had to kind of see if they had a central page for this campaign, and they really didn't. The at NoDAPL Twitter handle was by far the biggest single Twitter page when you type in NoDAPL on Twitter, and that has 74,000 followers, which isn't bad. But there were also probably 10 or 12 others that I saw that, Twitter accounts that had very similar handles with 1,000 followers here, 1,000 followers there. So it just kind of shows that they didn't really have one base on Twitter. They just kind of had a hashtag. And then similarly on Facebook, the Standing Rock Sioux tribe gained obviously a lot of likes from this movement with 576,000 likes. I'm sure it wasn't even nearly that high before the movement happened. But I mean, it's when you can't find that page by just searching hashtag NoDAPL or typing in NoDAPL on Facebook into the Facebook search. You have to type in Standing Rock to find that page. And when you type in NoDAPL, the biggest page that pops up is right here, the Standing Rock hashtag NoDAPL Stop Dakota Access Pipeline page, which has just 35,000 likes. So if you wanted to find the central organization to this, the central voice to this movement on Facebook, you really couldn't find it without trying really hard. And then as the American Marketing Association article also pointed out, if you type in NoDAPL on GoFundMe, you get 710 different results with, very, very fragmented, I'm sure, funds that are smaller, groups of funds that are going to who knows, when you could have all of these funds going to one central figurehead. So, when you have no central organization to go to and to turn to for really the official word on where the campaign is at, and no official spokesperson, then all you really can do is go on social media and search the hashtags, search the keywords, and try to find people. And when you do this, when you have no leader and you're just kind of listening to anyone who dubs themselves a leader in this campaign, then you also run the risk of having people identify themselves as leaders who aren't credible. One of the major criticisms of this campaign was that there were a lot of protesters at the site who were making false claims about the severity of what police were doing there, making false claims about what was happening to them, and it really kind of took a hit to the credibility of the movement when, if you just had an official spokesperson, you had an official organization or leadership to this movement, then you can tune out those people who are making false claims, and you can tune them out because you know that they're not the official head of the organization. So, just kind of in summation, what I would have done is it's great to dub a movement like this with a hashtag. As I said, it has many different benefits, but to just kind of leave it at that and leaving the central unifier of the campaign being merely a hashtag, then you run this risk of having people who may want to get involved, but they really have no idea who to turn to, who's the leadership, who's the official word on the issues, and it really just makes the campaign a fragmented mess that may have had a negative effect on the effectiveness of the campaign. But like I said, overall, I thought it was a great campaign. To go from 30 young people on an unknown Indian reservation to one of the biggest national stories of the entire year is pretty impressive. And the way that they did it through social media was in my mind very impressive. So here's my Works Cited page. I'm sure if you want to pause this, you can. It's very hard to format it in MLA formatting as far as the indentations go, But the rest of that is MLA format for the works cited. If you want to check out the articles, I have the URLs at the end of each of those citations. So thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation.